Prince's last Diddy recording played in trial.
The moment Prince's voice resonated through the courtroom, Diddy's expression transformed completely. His meticulously controlled demeanor fractured as the final recording of the legendary artist echoed throughout the chamber. A spectral testimony from beyond the grave. What did this recording contain that caused one of music's most influential figures to lose his composure? Day 3 of this explosive trial just unveiled evidence nobody anticipated, with implications sending shockwaves throughout Hollywood.
He said he would get physical. That one male guy who did things with Diddy and Cassie said he witnessed him get physical. Don, so again, we talked about how the domestic charges aren't, what he's being, what he's on trial for. But boy, it's stacking up. And I feel that the jury is going to take that into consideration.
The first Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in.
Cassie testified he would become physically aggressive. That one male individual who participated in activities with Diddy and Cassie stated he witnessed Diddy become physical with her. So again, while domestic charges aren't what he's currently on trial for, the evidence is certainly accumulating. I believe the jury will inevitably consider this pattern. The first Diddy gathering I attended was at Prince's residence. Imagine going to Prince's home for Diddy's party where Tyrese is performing, while Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher swing on actual swings. That's precisely what was happening just beyond the wall. The one element distinguishing this event from a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity gathering that attracts numerous young women, men, or others is that Diddy prohibited guests from bringing their own security into his events. Day 3 commenced identically to the previous 2. Journalists hurried for optimal seating, celebrities entered discreetly through side entrances, and legal teams arranged their documents with practiced efficiency. However, something felt distinctly different this morning. The courtroom wasn't merely occupied, it crackled with anticipation. Security personnel positioned themselves at every corner. That's standard for high-profile cases, correct? Except today they doubled the normal presence. 4 officers stationed themselves directly behind Diddy's table, something unprecedented during previous sessions. A court insider later revealed they received special instructions that morning, though no explanation was provided. Diddy entered appearing unaffected, wearing an impeccably tailored navy suit, acknowledging supporters in the gallery and displaying his characteristic smile. His legal team surrounded him protectively, whispering strategy. As they settled, he projected confidence and control. What escaped his notice was the unusual activity at the prosecution table. 2 technical specialists quietly configured equipment absent during the first 2 days. They tested connections and consulted with the lead prosecutor, who repeatedly glanced toward Diddy with unmistakable anticipation. Something significant was imminent, known exclusively to the prosecution. Speculation circulated everywhere. A courtroom reporter later commented, "People were messaging each other across the room, wondering what bombshell the prosecution was preparing to reveal. We all sensed it approaching." The judge entered and, following standard formalities, paused to make an unusual declaration. "I want to remind everyone present that regardless of what evidence is presented today, I expect complete composure in my courtroom." His gaze lingered on the gallery before adding, "Any disruptions will result in immediate removal." The prosecution's opening statements initially followed their established methodical approach, reviewing previous testimony and connecting evidence points. It appeared routine, until the lead prosecutor abruptly halted mid-sentence. Your Honor, at this time the prosecution would like to present critical audio evidence recently authenticated by our forensic team. She approached the bench holding a small black device. The defense immediately objected, claiming insufficient notification regarding this evidence. An intense sidebar followed with Diddy's attorneys gesturing emphatically, but the judge ultimately ruled favorably for the prosecution. The evidence had been properly disclosed during discovery. He announced the prosecution could proceed. That's when the pivotal moment occurred. The prosecutor turned to address the courtroom and delivered the statement that altered everything. What you are about to hear is the final private recording made by Prince Rogers Nelson before his death. The room froze completely. Journalists ceased typing. A collective gasp resonated throughout the space. Prince, the musical genius, the icon, was about to speak posthumously. Diddy's lead attorney grasped his client's arm. The color drained from Diddy's face with alarming speed. His entire legal team huddled closer, frantically whispering as the prosecution connected their device to the courtroom audio system. In that moment, before a single note played, the power dynamics in the room shifted dramatically. Diddy's legal team clearly anticipated devastating evidence, and judging by the sudden panic in Diddy's eyes, so did he.
Trying to listen. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff that I've heard and seen already. I'm really trying to connect the dots here and think like, damn, what if Prince was what if he caught wind of some, I'll just say allegedly, stuff that Diddy might have been doing that seems to be like, I ain't talking about consensual things, I'm talking about illegal things or whatever. But I'm just like, would Diddy be that dumb to like not think that Prince, this celebrity, has cameras in his house as well? So I'm just trying to think, like, because if Prince has cameras and he's recording stuff, you know, to get some dirt on Diddy, I don't know. I feel like Diddy, with all his cameras that he allegedly had, or no, they actually found cameras.
Problems?
That I don't know, right? What I know is that he was really health conscious. He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol. I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, you know, so, you know, that also really concerned me, because it made me think that, wow, so you mean you do all these things to take care of yourself and you die so young?
What you're about to hear was recovered from Prince's private vault, the prosecutor announced. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Attendees leaned forward attentively. Journalists frantically typed on their devices. This wasn't ordinary evidence. This was Prince speaking from beyond the grave. The prosecutor explained the recording was created just weeks before Prince's death in 2016. This was never intended for public hearing, she stated. Prince created this as insurance, documenting what he personally witnessed. When Prince's voice first played through the speakers, a woman in the third row covered her mouth and wept. The impact wasn't merely from hearing him, it was his tone. Prince sounded concerned. His voice was subdued, almost secretive, completely unlike his confident performance persona. "I'm making this recording because I don't know who to trust anymore," Prince began. The audio quality was impeccable. You could hear his deep breaths between sentences. This wasn't Prince performing. This was Prince in his most private, vulnerable moment. What followed transformed the entire courtroom atmosphere. Prince began naming specific individuals, dates, locations, and at the center of everything was Diddy. Prince described gatherings at Diddy's properties in the Hamptons and Miami, the identical events that 3 previous witnesses had already detailed. I observed Diddy's face during the recording. Within seconds, his confident expression collapsed. His eyes widened. His attorney attempted to whisper something, but Diddy stared forward, completely immobilized. Prince's voice grew increasingly urgent as the recording progressed. "What happens at these gatherings isn't merely inappropriate, it's criminal," he stated. I've witnessed their operations. I've seen who's involved. I've seen who gets hurt. Each statement appeared to impact Diddy physically. The recording's significance cannot be overstated. Prince wasn't merely confirming prosecution claims, he was providing insider verification that nobody could challenge. You cannot cross-examine a deceased witness. You cannot intimidate him into altering his testimony. Prince described a specific gathering in December 2015. He identified attendees, including 2 celebrities who had previously denied attending Diddy's private events. Prince mentioned observing the usual arrangement in the private upstairs rooms, describing details matching exactly what the prosecution outlined in their opening statements. The courtroom remained absolutely silent, except for Prince's voice. Even the judge leaned forward, listening intently. Court reporters later stated they'd never experienced anything comparable. The collective shock was almost tangible. I attempted discussing this with him, Prince stated on the recording. I told him this behavior must stop. He simply laughed and said I should mind my own affairs if I wanted to continue working in this industry. At that precise moment, the prosecutor paused the recording. The timing was perfect, almost theatrical. Every individual in the courtroom turned toward Diddy. His composed facade had completely disintegrated. His face appeared ashen. His hands, which had remained perfectly still throughout the trial, now visibly trembled. His lead attorney placed a yellow legal pad before him, presumably to shield the jury's view of his reaction. But the damage was done. Everyone had witnessed it. The moment Prince's voice identified him, Diddy's carefully constructed wall of confidence collapsed entirely.
Became such a big deal back then is ever since my 3rd album, I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. And that's kind of the situation we're in right today. They're not going to exist much longer. But it's not like we're against them or anything like that. The idea is that we find better ways of working with one another. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they own the thing that they ship.
Cassie Ventura on the witness stand for a 4th day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs' desires. I'm always ready to freak off, one message said.
Cassie was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009, I'm always ready to freak off. There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
What truly astonished everyone wasn't merely Prince's testimony. It was witnessing Diddy's complete psychological collapse before our eyes. For 2 consecutive days, he'd embodied perfect composure. When accusers directly identified him, he remained expressionless. When incriminating images appeared on displays, he calmly consulted his attorneys. Not once did he reveal any vulnerability in his meticulously constructed persona. But Prince's voice changed everything. As the recording resumed following that brief interruption, Diddy's transformation proved alarming. His attorney, the same high-powered legal representative who has defended countless celebrities, placed a hand on Diddy's forearm, a standard calming technique for clients. Diddy recoiled so forcefully that water spilled from a glass on the defense table. Several jurors visibly reacted, exchanging meaningful glances. The man who built an empire on his cool, collected image was disintegrating in real time. A courtroom illustrator later informed reporters she'd never witnessed someone's physical demeanor transform so dramatically during testimony. Diddy's breathing became heavy and irregular, so pronounced that spectators in the back row could observe his shoulders rapidly rising and falling. His eyes darted throughout the room, as if seeking escape routes. The judge maintained constant visual contact with Diddy. As an experienced jurist who has presided over numerous high-profile cases, he clearly recognized warning signs of imminent behavioral breakdown. Diddy shifted repeatedly in his seat, then reached up to loosen his tie with trembling fingers. He leaned toward his legal team and whispered something with such urgency that 3 attorneys huddled closer. Prince's voice continued describing a private gathering in Beverly Hills. He mentioned a specific date, March 9th, 2016, and an address prosecutors had already documented in previous evidence. The moment Prince articulated that address, Diddy suddenly rose, not gradually or deliberately, but abruptly as if pulled upward by invisible forces. 4 security officers immediately advanced toward the defense table. Diddy's legal team grasped at his suit jacket, attempting to return him to his seat. Their expressions betrayed absolute panic. One attorney frantically whispered in his ear, while another attempted to position himself between Diddy and the jury box. The recording continued. Prince described entering a room where he witnessed behavior that precisely matched what prosecutors had outlined in their charges against Diddy. His lawyers appeared desperate now, practically climbing over each other to calm their client. Then it happened. Diddy completely lost control. "That's a lie," he shouted, his voice reverberating throughout the stunned courtroom. The outburst was so sudden and loud that a reporter in the front row visibly startled. "He wasn't even there. That never happened." The judge immediately struck his gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" He fixed Diddy with a severe glare. "Mr. Combs, control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt." The courtroom fell silent, except for Prince's voice still playing through the speakers. The prosecution's strategy became blindingly obvious in that moment. They had deliberately withheld this recording, reserving it until Diddy had settled into a false sense of security. They waited until day 3, when his guard might be lower, to present the one piece of evidence that would shatter his carefully constructed facade, and it worked flawlessly.
The other things that the Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So...
she is out of the freak-off stand. She is... when she's with Kid Cudi, or allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-off if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, she still loves Diddy. Diddy was jealous about her.
Oh, yeah, because that was another thing that the prosecutors were trying to do, is show that, that they had a very jealous relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, Kim Porter, Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter.
Right.
Trying to show that, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, this was a real relationship.
It was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right. Final story of the week. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few rumors flying around, like, you know, was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of Freakoff, why are they in hiding? Are they in hiding though?
I don't think they're in hiding. I just think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way or the other.
Even if you're at a white party, like just having a lot of fun, and, you know, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be linked in any way.
No, and that's why, like, all those people, there's a few people I think that have come forward and been like, I didn't see any of this freak-off stuff.
After the judge restored order, the prosecution resumed playing Prince's recording. What followed shocked everyone present. Prince hadn't merely made vague accusations, he had detailed 3 specific allegations that struck directly at the core of the case against Diddy. Prince revealed he'd been secretly documenting concerning behavior in the music industry for years. "I keep everything," his voice explained. "Dates, times, who was present, what occurred. I've been doing this since 2007. Legal experts in the room exchanged glances. This wasn't random observation. This was systematic documentation from one of music's most meticulous minds. The first bombshell arrived when Prince described gatherings he attended at Diddy's properties. "These aren't simply parties," Prince's voice explained. "They're calculated events. I watched him isolate young artists from their teams, get them alone, and place them in situations they couldn't refuse." Prince specified a Beverly Hills property and described a room layout that matched floor plans already entered into evidence. The courtroom remained completely silent as Prince continued. He expressed profound concern about how young artists were being manipulated at these industry gatherings. "They arrive believing this is their opportunity," Prince said. "By the time they realize what's actually happening, they're already trapped. I've witnessed this happen to at least 7 artists directly." The second allegation focused on a direct confrontation between Prince and Diddy. "I approached him at the Grammy after-party in 2016, Prince stated. "I told him I knew what was occurring and it needed to stop. He laughed in my face and said, 'You might be Prince, but you're not untouchable.' I interpreted that as a threat." Diddy's attorneys frantically scribbled notes as this played, clearly blindsided by this revelation. Perhaps most damaging was Prince detailing financial transactions between Diddy and several individuals who were allegedly compensated for their silence. Prince mentioned specific amounts, $2 million to one person, $1.3 million to another, that perfectly matched financial records the prosecution had presented earlier in the trial. "I've seen the payments," Prince stated. "I've seen the NDAs they signed. This isn't merely wealthy individuals behaving inappropriately. It's systematic and calculated." The precision of Prince's knowledge suggested access to information that only an industry insider could possess. As the recording continued, Prince's voice grew more somber. "I'm making this recording because I'm afraid to speak publicly. The power structure in this industry protects people like him. Nobody wants to acknowledge what happens behind closed doors." The recording concluded with words that sent chills throughout the courtroom. "If anything happens to me, ensure this reaches the appropriate authorities. This isn't solely about protecting myself. It's about protecting everyone who hasn't been able to speak up." When Prince's voice finally faded, the courtroom remained absolutely still. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. The prosecution had accomplished something extraordinary. They had transformed Prince into their star witness from beyond the grave. The lead prosecutor simply stood and said, "No further questions, Your Honor." She didn't need additional commentary. Prince had accomplished what no living witness could: speak without fear of consequences, revealing secrets that had been concealed for years.
They have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court? Again,
I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through, but I think that's something that you think about on both sides, you know, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, you know, their 3rd child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. Seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages, so he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swinger's lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous, or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and the defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand 2 to 3 days. So here we are.
In 7 seconds, Diddy's outburst completely transformed the entire trial. The moment Prince's recording concluded, his legal team jumped into crisis management mode. His lead attorney immediately stood, his voice almost trembling as he addressed the judge. Your Honor, we request a 15-minute recess to consult with our client. The desperation was evident to all observers. The judge didn't hesitate. Request denied. The court will continue with the presentation of evidence. He directed a stern look at Diddy. I expect no further disruptions. Diddy's attorneys appeared, stunned. They weren't accustomed to rejection. These were lawyers commanding $1,500 hourly, who typically receive whatever they request in court. But today, nothing proceeded in their favor. Meanwhile, the prosecution team couldn't conceal their satisfaction. The lead prosecutor maintained professional composure, but her second chair displayed a slight smile when Diddy shouted. They exchanged a brief glance that communicated everything. Their strategy had worked perfectly. They had anticipated this reaction, desired it, and now had it officially documented in court records. A legal analyst seated 2 rows behind me whispered to his colleague, "This is catastrophic for the defense. They've spent 2 days portraying him as calm and innocent. That image just disintegrated before the jury." The judge addressed the jury directly. "The outburst you just witnessed should be disregarded in your deliberations. Emotional reactions do not constitute evidence, but every trial attorney knows that once jurors observe something, they cannot unsee it." 3 jurors stared directly at Diddy, studying his every movement following the outburst. Court security took no chances after Diddy's eruption. 2 additional officers positioned themselves mere feet from the defense table. One officer stood directly behind Diddy's chair, close enough to reach him instantly if necessary. The remainder of the day proved brutal for Diddy. The prosecution continued presenting evidence directly connecting to Prince's recording. They displayed financial records matching the exact payments Prince had mentioned. They exhibited text messages from witnesses describing identical events Prince had detailed. Diddy sat perspiring through his designer suit. His hands trembled so visibly that his attorney passed him a legal pad, presumably to provide something to hold. He declined water when an assistant offered it. By mid-afternoon, he appeared physically ill. His facial expression transformed from confident to cornered. The final blow arrived just before court adjourned. Diddy's legal team filed an emergency motion to exclude Prince's recording from evidence, claiming potential manipulation and impossible authentication given the witness's deceased status. Legal experts immediately recognized this as a desperate attempt to undo the irreversible. The timing of this motion revealed the true panic consuming his defense team. Emergency motions typically appear only when attorneys exhaust all other options. As everyone exited the courtroom, legal analysts already made bold predictions. This will be the moment people reference when discussing how the case was lost, one prominent television legal expert told his producer. In a single day, Diddy transformed from appearing as a man fighting false accusations to someone who lost control when confronted with truth. A veteran court reporter summarized perfectly, "I've covered hundreds of celebrity trials and never witnessed someone's case collapse so completely in a single moment." Playing Prince's recording on day 3 wasn't fortunate timing. It represented a masterful strategy the prosecution had planned for months. Court insiders revealed the prosecution team possessed this evidence from the beginning, but deliberately withheld it until Diddy began feeling comfortable in the courtroom. They wanted him relaxed before revealing it, a source close to the prosecution. Team informed me the first 2 days were designed to lull him into false security. This explains why the prosecution's case appeared somewhat routine during opening days. They weren't revealing their complete strategy. The team spent nearly 4 months authenticating Prince's recording. They engaged 3 separate audio forensic experts to verify it hadn't been altered or manipulated. They anticipated immediate defense challenges to its authenticity, so they established an ironclad verification process to withstand scrutiny. Particularly calculated was their analysis of Diddy's previous courtroom behavior. The prosecution team studied footage from his past legal appearances and identified a pattern. Diddy typically maintained perfect control during the first 48 hours of proceedings, but became noticeably less guarded as trials progressed. They literally timed their revelation to the precise psychological moment when he would be most vulnerable. The prosecution constructed their case methodically. They began with foundational elements, establishing witnesses who could verify locations, dates, and basic facts. Then they added structural components, financial records, and text messages. All carefully designed so when Prince's voice finally played, every detail he mentioned would connect to evidence the jury had already seen and accepted. Their presentation wasn't improvised either. A courthouse employee revealed the prosecution. Team actually rehearsed multiple times how they would play the recording. They practiced the exact moment to pause it, precisely when to observe Diddy, and even rehearsed their neutral expressions when his inevitable reaction occurred. What makes this strategy so devastating is how they've established Prince as the perfect witness. He cannot be intimidated, he cannot be cross-examined, his motives cannot be questioned. Prince speaks posthumously with credibility no living witness could match. The prosecution's masterstroke was timing this revelation for day 3, when media attention in high-profile cases traditionally begins to wane. Cable news typically covers opening statements intensely, then reduces coverage until closing arguments. By introducing their strongest evidence on day 3, they guaranteed renewed media focus exactly when public interest might have started declining. This wasn't solely about convincing the jury, a veteran legal analyst explained. It was about controlling the public narrative too. They just ensured this case will dominate headlines again. As court adjourned, the contrast between legal teams couldn't have been more pronounced. The prosecution gathered their materials calmly, occasionally sharing satisfied glances. Meanwhile, Diddy's team huddled in obvious distress, some making urgent calls, while others frantically searched legal texts. The power balance had completely shifted within minutes. One moment, Diddy was a powerful music mogul fighting allegations. The next, he was a desperate man, watching his carefully constructed image crumble under testimony from a music legend speaking freely from beyond the grave. As the third day concluded, something profound had changed in that courtroom. Prince's voice, clear, specific, and impossible to silence, had accomplished what years of allegations couldn't. It shattered Diddy's carefully maintained facade before everyone present. The trial resumes tomorrow, but everyone recognizes nothing will remain the same. The voice of a music legend just delivered the most powerful testimony possible, catching Diddy completely unprepared. What keeps industry insiders awake tonight isn't just Diddy's fate. It's what else might exist in Prince's private vault. Who else did he identify? What additional recordings exist that haven't yet been revealed?